A2000 EST OCOEE. They said if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. They said my time's wasted if I ain't chasing a bag. But pops told me never chase nothing. Only here to lead lost souls to the kingdom. That's facts. I only focus on the kingdom and everything else that I need. I know it will attract. If I lose it all now, I know it'll bring it right back. I ain't worried about the cards or the clothes or the plaque. Even if I ball and count big stacks, I would never put that before you know I won't get attached. Cause that would never last though. You wrapped your arms around me like a lasso. You went and painted the picture Picasso. Oops, Picasso, you made my heart grow. A lesson I learned from the seed is it starts slow. Trust me, you gon' see the tree if you look close. Don't you know having faith is a substance of things that you don't see. But trust me, you gon' see the fruits of your labor. Trust in the king and my focus on the laser. Walking in purpose, I'm blessing on favor. I tried to go fall in love with the paper. Till you show me love that will never waver. No one can give me the food that you cater. Tried to move fast and regretted it later. As long as I focus on you and your truth, I know I'll get the fruits of my labor. They said if you ain't stacking guap, then you basic. They said my time's wasted if I ain't chasing that cash. I said the first
Official Mike said in the chat, Trudeau is a dictator. No newbie dude said in the chat, I'll be there soon, gimme a sec.
Picasso, oops, Picasso, you made my heart grow. A lesson I learned from the seed is it starts slow. Trust me, you gon' see the tree if you look close. Don't you know having faith is a substance of things that you don't see. But trust me, you gon' see the fruits of your labor. Trust in the king and my focus on laser. Walking in purpose, I'm blessing on favor. I tried to go fall in love with the paper. Till you show me love that will never waver. No one can give me the food that you cater. Tried to move fast and regretted it later. As long as I focus on you and your truth, I know I'll see the fruits of my labor. Trust in the king and my focus on laser. Walking in purpose, I'm blessing on favor. I tried to go fall in love with the paper. Till you show me love that will never waver. No one can give me the food that you cater. Tried to move fast and regretted it later. As long as I focus on you and your truth, I know I'll see the fruits of my labor.
Official Mike said in the chat, Trudeau wants to end children with opioids called fen.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Back again with yet another stream. And today we actually have a whole lot of topics to go through. Sorry for the late start there on the stream, but yeah, we have tons and tons and tons of things to get to. We've got the whole situation in Virginia with Winsome Sears misgendering another member of the legislative body. That'll be an interesting one to go over, because I have some thoughts about that. And there's also part of the story that I guess the mainstream media didn't heavily cover it, but there's part of the story that basically the entirety of Twitter, X, or whatever, they all kind of ignored one part of the story that I think is rather interesting and relatively surprising if you're relatively familiar with Winsome Sears. So that's interesting. I'm also doing a bit of a raw reaction to Project 2025. Hearing lots of noise about that. I still haven't 100% made up my mind about that. But it is something we're going to be talking about on the stream today. Also be reacting to Joe Biden's appearance on Seth Meyers' late night program, I believe on NBC. That'll be a fun one to react to. I'm expecting it to be somewhat awkward because it's Joe Biden. Let's see. We've got recap of CPAC. I've got a bunch of things. You know what? I'm not gonna spoil it for you guys. I'm gonna just go through as many things as I can because you guys know I often play and do many things for my streams and then end up not having the time to go through everything. So, yeah. Official Mike says Trudeau is a dictator. Trudeau wants to end children with opioids called I don't know what that means. Fentanyl? Is that what you're talking about? Are you censoring yourself because you have strict speech restrictions over there in Canada? Trudeau is more of a dictator than Trump. Trump isn't even a dictator, and he doesn't want to be either, from what I can gather. And this is good for someone who doesn't really like the man anymore. Trudeau is official Mike says, holy moly, that's news. They need to report better content. Misgendering is newsworthy. I mean, again, it's not really the mainstream news that's covering it. It's more going viral on Twitter/X. So that's more of where it's going viral. It's not really part of like mainstream news. But I do agree, it's kind of a silly thing to go viral. But I think that, well, I mean, I'll get to it because it's basically the lead story for the stream. I'm going to go ahead and pause the music. Let's see. So someone made news by calling a actually, no. I'm trying to think of like what's the best intro to do for this because there's so many ways I could do this and there are some very delicious ways that I could do this. But I'm thinking that what I'm going to do is actually, hold on. Let me skip this to the right part here. Let's see here. So here's some local news I would not have expected to go viral. But interestingly, it most certainly did go viral. So in a state Senate meeting, I believe in the state of Virginia, Winsome Sears, who is, I believe, a Republican, was, speaking to a male member of the legislature, and she referred to him as sir. And all hell broke loose, it seems. Now, of course, because this is in the Senate, they had relatively subdued reactions, but you could tell that the spirit in the building was stirred. And this whole situation went viral on Twitter. Now, one thing I noticed was that no one on Twitter and no one on YouTube went uploaded the entire situation with context. So I decided that I would react to basically the entire thing. And I do know for those of you guys who are viewing this live, this is going to seem slow and tedious because there are going to be some silent moments in the stream. But check this out because it's going to have all the context. And not only that, there's going to be a moment that did not go viral at all. And basically everyone ignored. So enjoy. Here is the clip of Winsome Sears misgendering someone, as the gender ideology folks would say. Oh, hold on. Let me unmute this tab. Sorry about that.
Ayes 27, noes 13.
Ayes 27, noes 13. The bill passes.
On page 14, House Bill 592.
Senator Hashmi, the senator from Chesterfield.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that HB 592 pass, and speaking to that motion.
The senator may continue.
Thank you, Madam President. This bill just simply directs that the Department of Health's emergency regulations that were put into place related to prescription drug price transparencies remain in effect until the final regulations are promulgated, and there is a that this went into effect retroactively beginning January 1st, 2024. It simply states that the emergency regulations will remain in place until as needed. And with that, I move that we pass the bill.
For what purpose does the senator from Prince William rise?
Madam President, rise for parliamentary inquiry.
The senator may state it.
Madam President, how many votes would it take to pass this bill with the emergency clause?
That would be 4/5, Senator.
And what would be the exact number for that, Madam President?
Yes, sir, that would be 32.
Now I'm kind of curious to see what the woman in the teal sweater there was trying to tell Winsome. It's kind of hard to tell.
The question is,
But yeah, then he kind of storms out. I guess because of my my webcam, you can't really see. But yeah, he kind of storms
shall the
out
bill
there.
pass? Those in favor of that
Let
motion
me
will
rewind
record
so you
their
guys can
votes aye.
see.
Those opposed, no. Are the
Yeah,
The
he
question
storms
is,
out there.
shall the bill pass? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
So they voted, and one would think based on that that was pretty much it. However, that was not it, because they ended up going for a 5-minute recess after Winsome Sears had trouble getting some people to respond to her, because she was kind of like basically running the thing. She was trying to get people to respond, move forward to the next sort of business, but then someone asked for a 5-minute recess. That 5-minute recess was granted. And when the 5-minute recess was over, this is what transpired.
Madam Clerk.
House Bill 964.
Chair again recognizes Senator Hashmi, the senator from Chesterfield.
I did find it interesting when going through this video for the first time that she did seem stressed in this segment. There are basically 3 segments. This is the second one. It did seem like she was relatively stressed here, which I found interesting.
For what purpose does the senator is at ease?
So, I don't have the biggest grasp on all of the procedures of state senates, but I got the impression that basically she was like, let's take a break. Not necessarily an official one, but it's like we're going to take a pause on all the items on our agenda. Now, after what looks like a 2-minute pause, this is what happens, and this is the final segment of the video that I'm going to show.
To me, that I said something that upset Senator Rome. Let it be known, I am not here to upset anyone. I am here to do the job that the people of Virginia have called me to do, and that is to treat everyone with respect and dignity. I myself have at times not been afforded that same respect and dignity. But in this body, and as long as I am president of the Senate, and by the grace of God, I will be treated with respect and dignity, and I will treat everyone else with respect and dignity. I have called people not by their names, but by everyone else's names. Indeed, I have just put the Senate at ease in the name of the House. It is never my intention to make anyone offended, and I hope that others would consider that they would try not to offend me as well. We are all equal under the law. And so, I apologize, I apologize, I apologize. And I would hope that everyone would understand there is no intent to offend, but that we will also give each other the ability to forgive each other. I have seen us conduct ourselves in ways that we would not expect of our own children or nieces or nephews. And so I would hope that we take this opportunity to be kind to each other, to be gracious to each other, to be about the people's business. That is what I hope. and I join you in serving the people of this great commonwealth. I join you in being a citizen of this great country. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
So I decided to let a lot of that run, mostly just because that's content that's not available on YouTube. Also, a lot of people don't have all the full context. A lot of people don't know that Winsome actually apologized for misgendering. What is this? Danica Noam, I think. Danica Noam. Danica Rome. Sorry, Danica Rome. For misgendering Danica Rome. Most people don't know that she apologized for doing that. The whole situation, I think, was rather interesting. From what I can gather, I did some quick Google searches of Winsome Sears. She is very strongly against kind of like wokeism. If you guys want to pretend that woke isn't a thing, then against Marxism and against progressivism, against gender ideology. She's not a big fan of these new extremist movements. And she's spoken, very aggressively against them. Not necessarily in a mean way, but she is very firm. So for her to, misgender Rome isn't entirely shocking. What was surprising to me, though, is that she was surprised. Now, maybe she was worried that clip would go viral or whatever, and that she would get pressure and that she would get hate, and that might threaten her seat in some way. Certainly a possibility. She did seem relatively stressed in that second segment that I played. But I think that's kind of a shame that she, kind of felt pressured to back down on what she said, because she didn't necessarily do anything wrong, right? Danica Rome is a man. He's a dude, right? So for her to, say sir was completely fine. And for her to back down and say, well, I shouldn't have said that. Well, by doing that, you're condoning lying, unfortunately. And as a Christian, my perspective is that we should not lie to people. Even if that might make them feel better, that's just not the right thing to do. And there are plenty of Bible verses that I could go to talking about why it's bad to lie. But I do think that it's important. I do think that this verse actually comes across as relatively relevant because, gender ideology is becoming very pervasive, right? It's something that is very prominent in our society now. And, this passage just feels timely. This is from Ephesians chapter 4. The general context here is that it's talking about what the apostles were called to do, but I think this applies to all Christians, honestly. It says here in verse 11, starting at verse 11, and he himself gave some to be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, and some pastors and teachers for the equipping of the saints for the work of ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ, till we all come to the unity of the faith and the knowledge of the Son of God, to a perfect man, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, that we should no longer be children tossed to and fro and carried about with every wind of doctrine by the trickery of men and the cunning craftiness of deceitful plotting, but speaking the truth in love may grow up in all things into him who is the head, Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and knit together by what every joint supplies, according to the effective working by which every part does its share, causes growth of the body for the edifying of itself in love. Now, for those of you who do not understand Christianese, basically what that passage is saying is that as Christians, one of our main goals is not just for ourselves, but to encourage other people to grow in understanding of the gospel, growing in their understanding of who God is, and to, become better people, basically. Not being willing to just go along with the flow with what everybody else is saying, listening to what other people are telling you to do or telling you to believe or telling you to affirm, because they could be lying, but instead, plant yourself and root yourself and ground yourself in the truth of the scriptures. And it can be very hard to do so in the face of gender ideology, in the face of cancel culture, in the face of progressivism. Add whatever political thing you want to add, right? Political movement, even right-wing political movements, right? We've got the whole craze of Christian nationalism going on, which I might talk about later. That's not necessarily scriptural in my opinion. But instead of, going along with whatever these cultural movements are saying, instead we should be rooting ourselves in the scriptures. And it can be very hard, right? Winsome Sears found it hard, right? She started quaking in her boots and then ended up apologizing for what she said. That's not the way that we should be as Christians. A few disapproving looks in a chamber and all of a sudden we change our tune. No, that's not what we're called to do as Christians. It's not what we're called to do. So, I understand, right? Say certain things, say the truth, and it can hurt some feelings. Like that, the truth has a propensity to do that sometimes. But in all honesty, like, what's better, to get the approval of a few people, and then people start clapping, go, yay, woo, or people decide to spare you for the day and not cancel you today? Or is it to pursue your God rightly, pursue truth, and do what you can to grow as a human being and grow as a person and be honest with the people around you? I guess that's a question you have to answer for yourself. Very, very interesting, interesting story to cover for sure. Hopefully I worded everything correctly. I know a lot of people can take things out of context or whatever, but I think I kind of made my position clear, kind of went through a relevant enough passage that you could take away what I meant for you to take away, glean what I meant for you to glean, but also not abuse the clip. You can try to use it to cancel me if you want. I don't really care, but I try not to give, you know what they say, don't feed the trolls. So I try not to do that there to the best of my ability. Man. Let me read what you guys said in the chat. Merely is in the chat. What is up, Merely? Nice to see you here. I think I saw you in my last stream as well. Very cool. Official Mike said, hey, not a newbie, can I identify as a cyborg? The left has no reason to why you can't. I mean, you can identify with whatever you want to be, but you would just be deluded, so. I wouldn't be surprised if the woke mafia tried canceling Jesus. Oh, they would. Bro, the mainstream, like, progressive left and, like, the religious right would both be trying to, like, crucify Jesus if he was down here. They'd be like, give us Barabbas! Or Trump. Oh, but some of y'all don't want to hear that. Okay. All right. Oh, man. Alrighty, so this whole thing has kind of got me a little bit confused, and I've been trying to do some researching and studying, but I haven't found a way to dig into this that doesn't involve, biased reinterpretations of what Project 2025 is, or reading the official, 10,000 page PDF that has, every bullet point of everything that they plan on doing. So at some point, maybe I will go through the whole PDF. It sounds like something very tedious. I think eventually a proper, unbiased, point by point will be done of Project 2025. And hey, join my Discord, because, if you see an updated summary of Project 2025, I would love to hear about it. So join the Discord and send a link. I would like to see it. But in the meantime, this is the best we have. This article is the most unbiased article about Project 2025 that I could find. This one is from the Epic Times. And by the way, I've been kind of on the fence about this for a while, in part because this is being helmed by the Heritage Foundation, and I've heard that at least some members of the Heritage Foundation, if not the Heritage Foundation itself, leans a bit authoritarian. Some of them are Christian nationalists. So it's like, I'm kind of wary to support, an authoritarian movement. Y'all know that I'm not on board with Christian nationalism. So I'm being a bit trepidatious. But I also want to be fair because it's very, very possible and nay, in fact, likely that the mainstream media has poisoned the well about this entire proposal. Now, the Epoch Times is known for leaning to the right, so I'm not expecting them to misrepresent what is in the Project 2025, but I just want to go through it and let's see what. I just want to go through it here with a skeptical eye and see if we can kind of get insight on what, by all accounts, is going to be the next major right-wing offensive and campaign is going to be like. Official Black Mike here in the chat is saying Project 2025 is the plan for 2025. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. All right, so here's the headline. In depth, conservative group lays out plan to gut administrative state on day one of second Trump term. Former Trump officials have a plan to eliminate administrative state by replacing thousands of federal employees with ideological conservatives. Now, everything I've heard about that is actually true. Former President Donald Trump has vowed to finish draining the swamp. He never started. Eliminating special interests and bad actors from the federal government and make it easier to fire rogue bureaucrats who undermine presidential policies. Other Republican candidates have even bolder plans to attack the so-called administrative state by eliminating entire federal agencies. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis would close the IRS and the U.S. Departments of Education, Commerce, and Energy. Former Vice President Mike Pence would shutter the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Education and clean house at the Department of Justice. Now, right there is very interesting. I'm actually not sure if I'm the biggest fan of that. First of all, I don't know if Mike Pence would be willing to participate in anything that Donald Trump is planning on doing. And from what I hear, Donald Trump is likely going to put Project 2025 into effect, although I have not heard confirmation from him specifically that he's going to do that. I will say this. The EPA, despite the fact that it does, I think, unnecessarily hamper, coal and oil and all that type of energy production, let's be honest, limiting certain emissions and stuff has made our air cleaner from what little I've seen of the science. So I don't know that we should entirely get rid of the EPA, because also, if we get rid of the EPA, then our environment would eventually end up looking like China's or India's, or even worse, in my opinion. So I don't think that getting rid of the EPA wholesale is a good idea, although it should certainly probably be drastically downsized. That wouldn't hurt my feelings at all if that happened. Department of Education, I do agree. We should probably get rid of the Department of Education because the states can do education for themselves. Maybe keep the Department of Education for DC, because, hey, someone has to run the public schools. I do think public schools should exist. So, not entirely mad about that. Let's see what else we have here. Let's continue down to the next paragraphs. Any of those aims would be abetted by the efforts of a cadre of former Trump staffers who have created a detailed transition plan aimed at dismantling the administrative state beginning on the first day of the next presidential term. Project 2025 is both a policy agenda and recruitment effort intended to reshape the federal bureaucracy by instituting sweeping policy changes and replacing tens of thousands of federal workers with vetted, trained, ideologically conservative employees ready to educate an extreme makeover of the executive branch. Project 2024 is detailed in Mandate for Leadership, The Conservative Promise, a nearly 1,000 pages. The nearly 1,000-page tome was written by a broad coalition of conservative thinkers and activists to seize what they call a, quote, last opportunity to save our republic, end quote. The group is close to its goal of attracting almost 20,000 potential federal employees who are willing to move to Washington and reshape the government in the mold of modern conservatism, Associate Director Spencer Treaton, I hope I'm saying that right, told the Epic Times, quote, "We are doing the next president's work ahead of time and expect many of our ideas, people, and plans to become a part of the next conservative administration," end quote, regardless of which conservative candidate is elected, Mr. Cretan said. Quote, "We plan to dismantle the deep state, not the government," end quote. He added, said, bro, who wrote this? Referring to unelected government employees and business leaders who influence U.S. policy. That may be easier said than done, according to some constitutional law experts. They point out that the president alone has limited power to institute wholesale change of the kind imagined by Project 2025 and its sponsor organization, the Heritage Foundation. Others believe the constitutional theory underlying the plan, if allowed to stand by the courts, could further weaken the republic it aims to save, paving for an authoritarian presidency of the kind feared by the framers of the Constitution. Now, I am pausing here to say that basically at this point, any conservative movement that is kind of like led by Christians or powered or fueled by Judeo-Christian values is always going to be framed by the mainstream media as authoritarian. Or like Christian nationalists in some sort of way. So prepare for that type of poisoning of the language. I do think that this article is relatively unbiased and is still kind of worried about Project 2025. So we'll get to those sections. But just beware, if you hear about Christian nationalism or you hear about, authoritarian Christians, most of them are not being authoritarian, right? Like, getting rid of abortion, for example, is not like authoritarian at all, any more than getting rid of slavery was in the times of slavery. So, you have to dig deeper and look into what the actual policies are. Don't just listen to what some journalist or some pundit says is extreme or whatever, right? Like there was that MSNBC clip of some lady saying like, "Oh, all these extreme Christians think that our rights come from God." Like... what a take, my friend. What a take. But if you ignore the framing of that, where it's like, oh, you ignore the fact, ignore her saying, oh, they're extremists, and then get down to what she's saying, oh, Christians believe their rights come from God. Well, yeah, we do. Anyways, going to the next section of the article, I'm kind of stunlocking myself on accident there. Managing the federal government has been a headache for presidents since the time of George Washington. Quote, "I anticipate that one of the most difficult and delicate parts of the duty of my office will be that which relates to nominations for appointments," end quote, President Washington wrote shortly after his inauguration in 1789. Then, as now, the Constitution gave precious little guidance about staffing the government below the level of appointed officials, according to Peter Castor, chair of the history department at Washington University. Quote, "No sooner did the federal government come into being than America scrambled to create a federal workforce that could secure the nation's goals," end quote, Mr. Castor wrote in an article for Brookings. I wonder if that's the Brookings Institute. Even in infancy, the United States was a vast country facing serious challenges. Quote, "All of these challenges required policy-making strategies, but they also required federal personnel to bring those strategies into being," end quote. Mr. Castor wrote, by 1802, the country employed, as a typo. Hold on, let me see here. Because I'm trying to skip the fat here. I don't want to miss anything important, but I don't want to bore you guys either. The federal bureaucracy, because of its vast size and scope, is unwieldy and unresponsive even to the President of the United States, according to critics. It has virtually become a fourth branch of the government, the administrative state. Presidents throughout history have railed against this problem. President Andrew Jackson swept a huge number of high-ranking public officials from office after his inauguration, including attorneys, bureau chiefs, customs officers, and federal marshals. Quote, Jackson claimed to be purging the corruption, laxity, and arrogance that came with long tenure and restoring the opportunity for government service to the citizenry at large through, quote, rotation in office, end quote. Daniel Feller, a history professor at University of Tennessee, wrote an article for Brookings. President Warren Harding appointed friends to high-ranking positions only to find they were using those offices for personal gain. Of course. What did you think would happen? What? Let me read that again. President Warren Harding appointed friends to high-ranking positions, only to find that they were using those offices for personal gain. When critics pointed that out, Harding said, my friends, they're the ones that keep me walking the floors nights. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. President Richard Nixon, angered that his cabinet officers were not publicly supporting his policies in Cambodia and, in fact, undermining them, retaliated by ordering the White House tennis court removed. What? President Nixon didn't enjoy the sport, but some of his cabinet members did. That's funny. That's funny. President Trump saw 92% turnover in top-tier staff in the 4 years of his administration, a record among presidents. Questions in September 2018 about the so-called turmoil in his administration, President Trump said, quote, we have acting people. The reason they are acting is because I'm seeing how I like them, and I'm liking a lot of them very, very much. There are people who have done a bad job, and I let them go. If you call that turmoil, I don't call that turmoil. I say that as being smart. That's what we do, end quote. The frustration in executing presidential policy, even through hand-picked officials, is magnified at the staff level, where tens of thousands of employees are required to implement any policy objective a president might have. And all of the 2 million federal employees have their own views on policy and are protected from easy dismissal by federal employment laws. They have the power to hinder policy initiatives by slow-walking projects or quiet quitting, exerting the bare minimum effort required to stay employed. In the federal bureaucracy, it's complicated because you can't really change policy without having a large number of people who are implementing the changes. And if most of the bureaucrats hate the changes, they will be less enthusiastic. Richard Pierce, a law professor at the George Washington University School of Law, told the Epoch Times. There may even be occasional cases where they try and figure out how to undermine the authority of their political boss, Mr. Pierce said. So what you get is a source of friction. The creators of Project 2025 see more than friction in the operation of federal agencies. They point to an embedded corpse of left-leaning staffers bent on thwarting conservative policies. Large swaths of the DOJ have been captured by an unaccountable, bureaucratic managerial class and radical left ideologues who have embedded themselves throughout its offices and components, Gene Hamilton wrote in Mandate for Leadership. A key aim of Project 2025 is to eradicate this supposed entrenched class of politicized employees from all federal agencies. The vision. Project 2025 proposes a 180-day agenda with agency-specific transition plans to be implemented on the first day of the next administration. The goal is to create a smaller, politically accountable government that brings the American people what they vote for, Mr. Cretin said. The Heritage Foundation has seen success with similar, less ambitious initiatives in the past, according to Mr. Cretin. The group published its first mandate for leadership in 1981. Oh, interesting. Ronald Reagan took office. Oh, yeah, there's some people in my Discord talking about how they liked Ronald Reagan. So there we go. The Ronald Reagan Easter egg. This 9th edition of the plan was crafted to gain broad acceptance among conservatives by including input from hundreds of political appointees, policy scholars, and leaders in more than 70 conservative groups. The result represents a conservative consensus, according to Mr. Cretin. Because Project 2025 includes a broad array of distinguished individuals and organizations, we will be able to say with confidence to the next conservative president that This is what the whole movement expects, he said. Previous versions, hold on. Is that, they literally repeated something they already said. This should have been proofread a little bit heavier. All right. President Reagan acted on about half of the ideas from the guide within his first year, according to the foundation. President Trump's administration relied heavily on Heritage's mandate for policy guidance, embracing nearly 2/3 of Heritage's proposals within just 1 year in office. Project 2025's website states. Those include additional military spending, ratcheting up work requirements for welfare recipients, and extracting natural resources such as oil, gas, and coal from federal lands, the organization says. The current version of the plan calls for reinstating Schedule F, President Trump's executive order reclassifying thousands of federal workers as at-will employees rather than as civil servants who enjoy legal safeguards. However, the project's larger target is to replace the heads of what are usually called independent agencies, such as the DOJ, the Centers for Disease Control, the FCC, the SEC, and others. These agencies are insulated from political influence to ensure that they act in line with the law and the best interest of the American people. The project's organizers see that protection as a license for unelected officials to make their own policy decisions. Unaccountable bureaucrats such as Anthony Fauci should never again have such broad, unchecked power to issue health guidelines that will certainly be the basis for federal and state mandates, the plan states. I actually do understand that. I'm on board with that. Like, I agree that there is some unchecked power. And I think, from what I've skimmed of the Heritage Foundation, one thing that I think is good about it is that it will replace the administrative state by giving the power of these various agencies to elected officials. This holds them accountable to voters. So that means basically if you want to change how the system works, all you got to do is vote. And depending on how you vote, the government will be able to work quicker because you're not going to be able to have that bureaucracy gumming things up. And this applies both to the Democrats and the Republicans. If the Democrats want to make a change, that will go quicker because you're not going to have people in their way. With Republicans, same thing. You're not going to have people going in their way. You're also not going to have people who are quiet quitting and doing their jobs as slowly as possible, stopping things up as well. So it's just going to make things more efficient. I do think that there are questions about whether or not that makes the state as a whole more authoritarian, though. I think that those concerns are going to be voiced in the latter sections of this article. Never again should political health bureaucrats be allowed to hide information, ignore information, or mislead the public concerning the efficacy or dangers associated with any recommended health interventions because they believe it may lead to hesitancy on the part of the public. The plan envisions the U.S. Supreme Court revisiting its 1935 decision in Humphreys Executor versus the United States, which ensures the independence of certain federal agencies. Oh my goodness, hold on. Sorry, my throat's drying up. Hold on, I gotta lubricate it. Give me a second. Woo! All right. Sorry about that. We're back in business. The limits of executive power. Okay, here we go. Key components of Project 2025 rely on the unitary executive theory of constitutional law, which holds that the president has sole authority over the executive branch of government. This relatively new interpretation of presidential power would allow the sweeping changes envisioned by the project's organizers. The theory has not been fully tested by the courts, and it has some pitfalls, according to legal experts. That's not the way the Constitution is designed to operate. David M. Dresden, a law professor at Syracuse University of College Law, told the Epoch Times, it's a framework document. It doesn't specify everything, but it does envision that there be mostly presidential control, but also congressional influence on officials, Mr. Dresden said. The president has big influence over on the executive branch. It's by design. But to say he has full control over it, that's man, these typos are killing me, man. They're killing me. Come on. That's just inconsistent with the appointments clause and the impeachment clause because he doesn't completely control who gets fired. The Congress can fire people if they commit high crimes and misdemeanors, Mr. Dresden said. I am pretty sure that Schedule F has at least some level of precedence. Hold on, let me see. Schedule F appointments. Let's see. Interesting. Okay. A Schedule F appointment, and I'm just checking to see if he's right here, that basically only Congress can fire people if they commit high crimes and misdemeanors. Because Schedule F, from what I hear, is basically the logic that's going to be used to get rid of a lot of these people. A Schedule F appointment was a job classification in the accepted service of the United States Federal Civil Service that existed briefly at the end of the Trump administration during 2020 and 2021. It would have contained policy-related positions, removing their civil service protections and making them easy to fire. It was never fully implemented, and no one was appointed to it before it was repealed at the beginning of the Biden administration. The purpose of the provision was to increase the president's control over the federal career civil service. While proponents stated this would increase flexibility and accountability, it was widely criticized as providing means to retaliate against federal officials for political reasons. It was estimated that tens of hundreds of thousands of career employees could have lost their civil service protections, increasing the number of political appointments by a factor of 10. Yeah, not saying this challenge anywhere in the courts. Hold on, let's see. Response. Let's see here. Okay. Let's see. We're seeing opposition by House Democrats and support by Republicans is what we're saying here. Right. Representative James Comer supported the change. So this seems extremely partisan. Yeah, as long as Schedule F is constitutional, which doesn't seem to be unconstitutional, I don't see why that would have any trouble being implemented. Why Trump would have any trouble implementing it, to be honest. Mr. Pierce agrees with the idea that the president should have control over how policies are made and implemented in the federal government and should be able to fire officials who refuse to implement his policies. However, that control should be limited to those in higher federal offices. Well, to be fair, to be fair, like you need the people in the lower offices in order to implement the changes, and sometimes they can slow things up. So I completely understand wanting to give the president more control and the ability to fire even more people, not just those in the higher federal offices. In my version of the unitary executive, the president should have the power to remove any officer of the United States who has the power to make a policy decision on behalf of the United States. And that would certainly include people like commissioners of the Federal Trade Commission and commissioners of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Mr. Pierce said. I expect that the court will be addressing that issue in 2 to 3 years, he added, suggesting a possible re-examination of Humphrey's decision. Yet there are limits to that power, Mr. Pierce maintains. The president cannot unilaterally terminate an agency. He can't terminate thousands of employees. Even so, many presidents have found ways to remove people or reduce the federal workforce without resorting to mass firings. Under the Reorganization Act, the president has some discretion to relocate agencies, and what President Trump did was relocate a couple of agencies to locations that were considered undesirable, Mr. Pierce said. Many of the employees of the agency resigned, quit, or took early retirement rather than making the move from Washington, D.C. Oh, that's smart. That's smart. The vast majority of top-tier officials who left the Trump administration were not fired, but resigned under pressure, according to Brookings. Yeah, so basically this is more about the transition, right? This is not necessarily about what the plan is to do once the conservatives are in power. Now, there are two primary sources that I've found for what exactly is the plan for these conservatives once they kind of like get their positions. So I do want to go through these because I think this is equally as important as, you know, how the administrative state is going to be eradicated, because, you know, all the people who are going to be replacing those, those deep state operatives, basically, they've all been vetted by the Heritage Foundation. They've gone through, done interviews. They already have a massive list of all the people who are going to replace the existing folks in these positions. So if we go through all the policy positions, we can get an idea of what the new administrative state basically is going to look like. So this is a list of purported positions by Wikipedia. From skimming this, it didn't seem completely accurate because it seemed to kind of rely a little bit too heavily on the positions of a few members of the Heritage Foundation and not necessarily be reflective of the Heritage Foundation itself's official position, although I had trouble finding a list of official policy positions on the website that wasn't buried in some obfuscated like 1,000-page PDF file. So one could say that they might not have any official positions on any of these things, but I think it might be worth it to go through the list nonetheless. So here we've got abortion. Okay, so we have here Roger Severino, Heritage Foundation Vice President of Domestic Policy, told a Students for Life conference that Project 2025 was, quote, working on those sorts of executive orders and regulations, end quote, to roll back Biden abortion policies and, quote, institutionalize the post-Dobbs environment, which is interesting. I don't know that you can necessarily codify an abortion ban at a federal level without legislation. So, excuse me. So that's going to be tricky. You know, Nikki Haley even hinted at this, and fairly so. Severino writes in the project's manifesto that the Food and Drug Administration is ethically and legally obligated to revisit and withdraw its initial approval of the abortion pills mifepristone and misoprostol. I'm not extremely familiar with those drugs, but I tentatively agree. I know mifepristone induces abortions, so I do agree with that. From what I hear, there are some very specific alternate cases for it other than abortions. But yeah, in general, like, nah, I'm fine with banning that. He also recommends that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, quote, update its public messaging about the unsurpassed effectiveness of modern fertility awareness-based methods, end quote, of contraception. I wonder what that means. What does that mean? Severino says that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services should require that every state report exactly how many abortions take place within its borders, at what gestational age of the child, for what reason, the mother's state of residence, and by what method. This seems like excess, to be honest, because if we just make abortion illegal, then those will be calculable when you look at arrest records. So, I don't know about arrest records, but like, if you're going to prosecute like abortion doctors or prosecute people who manufacture abortifacients, then that information is going to be there. I don't know if this needs to be public record. And I do like transparency. I do like stats, and I do like numbers. So I won't complain if every state does report these numbers. But to make it mandatory, I don't know if that's necessary. I won't complain about it, but I don't know if it's necessary. In Project 2025's Department of Justice section, Gene Hamilton calls for the enforcement of federal law against the U.S. mail for transportation of medicines that induce abortion. No, that's not a new idea. The problem with that is that I don't think the USPS is supposed to like be inspecting the mail and spying on our deliveries. So that'll be tricky to pull off without violating, I think, the Constitution in some way, as I understand it. All right. Census citizenship question. The project seeks to revive a Trump administration effort to include a question of whether an individual counted in the decennial U.S. Census is an American citizen. The census population count is used to reapportion congressional seats and the electoral college. Oh, I see. Wait. So is it saying that they should say that you should only be counted in the census if you're a citizen? I kind of agree with that. But census records also track like general population. If you have a lot of illegal immigrants, then like we should know how many people are in there. You could just calculate how many people are citizens, how many people are in there total, and then you can do math things like subtraction to figure out how many illegal immigrants there are. I do think that only citizens should be used to reapportion congressional seats. Like we shouldn't be determining, how the electoral college gets divvied out based on, non-citizens who shouldn't be allowed to vote anyways. Right? So next section, Christian nationalism. Okay, here's the big one. The big one for me and for a lot of other people is a very controversial subject. As the leader of the Center for Renewing America, Russell Vought has spearheaded an effort to instill precepts of Christian nationalism into government and public life should Trump win a second term. Again, the mainstream media loves slapping that label on conservative politicians. This Wikipedia article could very well be accurate in this assessment, but I would treat this account with a grain of salt if I were you. Political reported Vought has, quote, embraced the idea that Christians are under assault, end quote, which is true. And he sought to use his regular contacts with Trump to, quote, elevate Christian nationalism as a focal point. Oh. Well, if you're saying you're Christian nationalist, I can defend you. That's your fault, buddy. That's your fault. Unless that's what that's a quote from Politico. If that's a quote from Politico, then perhaps he is spared from my wrath. Vought has close ties with another former Trump administration official, Christian nationalist William Wolf. Okay, I have heard of him. I believe he actually is a Christian nationalist, if I remember correctly, with whom he said he was proud to work with on scoping out a sound Christian nationalism. Yeah, hey, sounds like Wolf. Wolf said in an October 2023 Politics and Jesus and Politics conference that he thought we were getting close to needing to heed the call to arms in defense of Christianity as the art of war becomes a part of our religion. I wonder if he's talking like in a literal sense or in a physical or figurative / political sense or social sense. Former Christian nationalist Brad Onishi, who now studies religion and extremism, noted in February 2024 that Lance Wallnau of the New Apostolic Reformation, who has said Trump was anointed, oh boy, has recently announced he was partnering with Charlie Kirk, a Project 2025 member. By the way, Project 2025 has tons of members and tons of affiliates, so they're not all necessarily Christian nationalists, even if the ones listed here are. Anishi observed that Speaker Mike Johnson has direct ties to the New Apostolic Reformation. Ooh, that's a big red flag. That's a big red flag. But that's interesting, though. I'll have to dig into that later at some point. Climate policy. I think we did go over climate policy that was mentioned in the Epoch Times article. Economy. The project provides a range of options for economic reform, which vary in their degree of radicalism. It is critical of the Federal Reserve System assigning the institution blame for the business cycle and advocates for the free banking and or commodity-backed currency such as a gold standard. Oh, smart, makes sense. Additionally, it recommends eliminating full employment from the Federal Reserve's mandate, instead focusing solely on the inflation target. Not sure if I understand exactly what that means. It also recommends reducing individual income taxes to 2 brackets, one of 15 and the other 30%, with the latter applying to income above the Social Security wage base to ensure the combined income and payroll tax structure acts as a nearly flat tax on wage income beyond the standard deduction. That's smart, but I just want a flat tax, bro. The only tax we should have is a sales tax on non-cash transactions. That's it. That's it. Easy to track. Can't cheat the system. The government makes more money when the people make more money, and is punished when the economy is worse. That's how taxes should be. You don't even need to file taxes. Just pay your 5 or 10 or 15% sales tax and you're good. I think that's fair. Fair, simple, and easy. Not seeing any. Oh yeah, no, never mind. Expansion of presidential powers. Project 2025 seeks to place the entire executive branch of the U.S. federal government under presidential control. Oh yeah, we actually talked about that as well. I don't necessarily think that this equates to fascism or authoritarianism necessarily. It seems like it's more shifting power and not necessarily centralizing it specifically just to the president. Because I think it also said that like Congress would have some authority to fire some people as well, right? So with the whole firing people and hiring people, that's not authoritarian, okay? to fire and hire people in the executive branch is not authoritarianism. LGBTQ rights. When discussing the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Severino called for the rescinding of regulations prohibiting the discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, transgender status, sex characteristics, etc. Generally agree, although I feel like exemptions should probably be limited, depending on what exactly it's referring to here, because that's a whole lot lumped in here. But churches should be exempt. For other institutions, not entirely sure. Depends on what you're talking about exactly. I do think in general there is a limited, if any, need to discriminate based on like gender identity, like whether or not you're trans. I don't understand why you would necessarily need to discriminate. Like, if I own like a fast food joint, I shouldn't be able to like bar trans people from using the bathroom. Like, you can't use the bathroom, you're trans. Right now, if I have rules that say like, if you're a dude, you have to use the men's restroom even if you think you're a woman, that's different. But I'm not applying rules differently to trans people that I wouldn't apply to cis people. So it's not necessarily discrimination, if you know what I mean. So that's tricky and interesting. I'm curious as to what exactly they mean by all that. Mass deportations of immigration. I'm on board with that. If that's something that they're going to do, then big W. Yep, here we go. Trump started in January 2024 that he would conduct the largest domestic deportation operation in history should he be reelected. Based. I will say, though, to be fair, not all these positions, I don't think and I think I said this already, but I don't know if all these positions are the official positions of the Heritage Foundation. Let's see here. Outlawing pornography. Is this the main thing that they want to do? Pornography manifested today in the omnipresent propagation of transgender ideology and sexualization of children, for example, is not a political Gordon, not inextricably binding up this. Well, what? I'm sorry, man. He's got like that, like 15th grade vocabulary. Like, what? It's a shame that he's not speaking in normal terms. It says it has no claim to First Amendment protection. Not sure if I agree that it has no claim to First Amendment protection. I mean, it's not speech, but it's expression, which is why I think it's been protected for so long. I will say though, if you're gonna ban the production of pornography, I'd be on board with that, because if you're if you're producing it in a way where the people who are participating in it are getting paid, then that's basically prostitution, which I think is a federal crime, right? So it should be illegal. And if you're doing it for free, then it's borderline sex trafficking, right? So, and this is assuming that you're being managed by someone, which, as I understand it, most people are. And you could argue that like websites like Fansly or OnlyFans and stuff like that, those could be viewed as managers as well. Even Patreon, I don't know if Patreon allows that type of thing. I don't really look into that, so. But yeah, there are many pre-existing precepts that you could use to ban the production of pornography. I think it's just it's a difficult case to make that it doesn't have First Amendment protections to distribute. But it'd be very good if we could ban the production of it here, because sex trafficking in the United States is a big problem. And so if you say, hey, you can't produce this content in the States, it doesn't completely solve the problem because people do it in other countries, but at the very least it's not happening on our soil anymore, which would be a good thing. So very sticky situation, but it's definitely something that we could certainly fight as a nation to some degree, the production of that stuff. But the real problem is the fact that it's on social media, in my opinion. I mean, that's the biggest problem. Project 2025 established. Oh, there's personnel. Oh yeah, we've already gone through personnel as well. So this is what Wikipedia says that their positions are. There's also this article here that's really quick, and I don't have the time to go through all this stuff. But the long and short of it is there are a lot of resources out there about the positions of the Heritage Foundation. The problem is it's all very weedy. It's all very weedy, and it's all kind of obfuscated in this congressional legalese. I do wish that their positions were more plainly, put forth. But hey, excuse me. At the very least, the Heritage Foundation seems to have some good intentions. I do think that many of the members, they seem to be Christian nationalists, but I don't know if that necessarily means that Project 2025 as a whole is going to be a Christian nationalist program, especially since we have tons and tons and tons and tons of groups included in the Heritage Foundation group and included in Project 2025 as affiliates who are very clearly not Christian nationalists. So from what I see, it's not entirely authoritarian. It skews somewhat authoritarian, but not particularly strongly. And it also is, I think it is good because it will make the government run smoother, right? People complaining about gridlock. This will fix some of the gridlock with allowing presidents to have cooperative people operating beneath him rather than people who are trying to gum up the works, so to speak. But yeah, still haven't 100% made up my mind about it. But I do completely agree with their transition plan. I do think the government should be able to fire more. I do think the president should be able to fire more people in the government. So that in and of itself is a W. So yeah, what are your guys' thoughts? I read through a lot. It's a lot of information to process. I'm sure that I'll still be turning over the information and might have a separate video or idea about this in the future. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, because I'd be curious to hear your opinions. Merely in the chat said I'm back. What did I miss? I basically ran through a whole bunch of stuff about Project 2025. I didn't get to all of it, but it's basically the closest that you'll get to a summary of Project 2025, because there aren't a lot of good summaries of Project 2025. It's a lot to wade through. You probably missed the most boring part of the stream, to be honest. All right. So apparently, not Donald Trump. Oh man. So Joe Biden was on, I think, Late Night with Seth Meyers, I think is the name of the show. He had an appearance on the program very recently. So I figured I would check it out. I'm sure it'd be interesting and entertaining to view. I'm expecting it to be awkward. Let's go through this. Let's go through this.
Welcome back to Late Night. We're here with President Joe Biden. You mentioned some classified materials, some documents recently leaked, some classified documents. And this isn't a gotcha show, but I do want to ask about it, that says you are currently 81 years old.
Who the hell told you that?
Yeah.
Wow. I'm shocked. I had no idea how old the president is.
It's classified. All jokes aside, according to recent polling, this is a real concern for American voters. How do you address that concern going forward as you come up to the 2024 election?
Well, a couple things. Number one,
It's interesting. He's trying to help Joe Biden pitch himself to the American people, which isn't shocking, to be honest.
you got to take a look at the other guy. He's about as old as I am, but he can't remember his wife's name.
Yeah.
And number one.
What do you mean? Did he? I don't think he ended up forgetting his wife's name, did he? Trump forgot his wife's name. Oh, I see. Yeah, apparently he did get his wife's name wrong.
My wife, our great first lady, she was a great first. People loved her. Yeah, people love her. Oh, look at that. Wow. Mercedes, that's pretty good.
It's not a gross sign of dementia. If that's a gross sign of dementia, then bro, I'm cooked. You know how many times I've missaid like words on this stream? I go back and try to edit the video and I'm like, no, I said it was good. I meant to say it was bad. It's very frustrating. But yeah, no, that doesn't necessarily mean he has dementia, but he is losing it a little bit. So, which is kind of a shame.
Number two, it's about how old your ideas are. Look, I mean, this is a guy who wants to take us back. He wants to take us back on Roe v. Wade. He wants to take us back.
What? He wants us to go back on Roe v. Wade? We already repealed it. Maybe you forgot. Maybe you forgot. But hey, that's not a clear sign of dementia. No. What? Does he want to bring it back again? Oh my goodness.
Back on a whole range of issues that are 50, 60 years, they've been solid American positions. And I really mean this sincerely. I think it's about the future. And every single thing we've done, I think we've got some good things done. Everything, and they told us we couldn't get them done because things were so divided. And but I think everything we've gotten done, he's just friendly stated he wants to do away with if he gets elected. And I really think his views on where to take America are older than, anyway. I don't want to get going.
What?
You talked about bipartisanship. And you could...
Bro, why'd you
really
finish
think his views
why'd you
on
finish your thought?
where to take America are older than, anyway. I don't want to get going.
You talked about bipartisanship and that you could actually work across the aisle when you ran in 2020. I was one of the people who thought that was maybe a foolish proposition, but you have gotten things done. Infrastructure chips, Inflation Reduction Act, some gun safety. You even got an immigration bill that passed in the Senate but never got taken up in the House. And what would you want to do? What's your 2024 agenda? Because I feel like we live in such crazy times that is one of the things I feel we hear less about.
Look, the 2020 agenda is to finish the job. For example, we're now in a position where we have the strongest economy of any major nation in the world, number one.
Is that true? That might be true, but it doesn't mean that we're growing or in the best shape, right? Like if the strongest man in the world gets fat, he might still be the strongest man in the world for a couple of days.
We got a way to go yet. Inflation is down, 880,000 manufacturing jobs. You know, we have 14 million new jobs. The unemployment rate is the lowest it's been for the longest time. We're building wealth for people. But we have to do more. The first thing I have to do is stop it from being turned around. For example, you talked about the border didn't pass. Well, guess what? We're going to pass that border. It's overwhelming. The border, stop it from being.
Wait. What's he saying?
You know, we have 14 million new jobs. The unemployment rate is the lowest it's been for the longest time. We're building wealth for people. But we have to do
How is that the case? Because haven't big companies been doing lots of layoffs?
more. First thing I have to do is stop it from being turned around. For example, you said you talked about the border didn't pass. Well, guess what? We're going to pass that border. So
Yeah, Joe, pass that border. Yoo-hoo, woohoo, let's go. Time to pass that border. What are you talking about, man?
overwhelmingly supported by Republicans and Democrats in the House and Senate. But because I don't know this for a fact, but I was told that Trump was picking up the phone, calling the Speaker of the House saying, don't let it pass. Why? Not because he doesn't think it's good, because it will benefit Biden. That's no way to run a country. That's no way to deal. We didn't, even when we had real divisions back when I was a young senator among Democrats and Republicans. That was.
If I remember, this border deal had massive caveats for Joe Biden, giving him lots of opportunities to where he could, cancel the deal that would have secured the border, paused it, issue stays for a certain amount of months. It's a little convoluted, but there were caveats that were just bad. And many Republicans were warning, hey, we should not implement this, even when the general tenor of the Republican Party was, hey, we should implement this. But after enough negative press from, more right-leaning Republicans, all the other GOP folks wisened up and they were like, yeah, nah, we shouldn't implement this. So it wasn't that it would make Joe Biden look good. It was that it would allow Joe Biden to reverse some of the gains that would have otherwise been made by passing such a legislation.
That wasn't the way it worked. And look, this is not your father's Republican Party. They got about 30% of the Republican Party controlling it all. And I think we're going to break it.
One of the things about this is not...
What? Break what? What does that mean? You're going to break the party?
Your father's Republican Party. It must be for somebody who's been doing this as long as you have. You can't get aid for Ukraine passed. And it seemed like for a long time, the American people agreed that Russia was the threat. And all of a sudden now, you see a Republican Party that is basically refusing to aid Ukraine in the fight against. Seems like Donald Trump is saying...
All of a sudden? The GOP and conservatives have been wavering on whether or not giving aid to Ukraine is a good idea for several months, if not a year or two now. I think it's been a topic of discussion throughout the entire GOP debates. So to act like this is something that's happening all of a sudden is extremely disingenuous.
Saying Russia can do whatever they want to NATO countries.
Not
Are you
saying,
shocked?
That's what he is saying.
Oh my goodness. I thought he's more informed than this. Hold on. Is Ukraine in NATO? In September 2022, following Russia's illegal attempted annexations of Ukrainian territory, Ukraine reiterated its request for NATO membership. At the 2023 Vilnius summit, allies reaffirmed their commitment that Ukraine will become an ally of NATO. But Ukraine is not in NATO at the moment. So no one's saying that Russia should be able to do whatever they want to NATO nations, right? And it's generally accepted. It's generally accepted that if Putin marched onto Poland, let's say, for example, that there would be swift retaliation.
Russia can do whatever they want to NATO countries.
Not
Are you
saying,
shocked?
that's what he is saying. He's been
I'm shocked. He's acting like he's completely uninformed on the situation. I thought he understood. See, I don't want to believe that he's lying because I like believing the best in people, but it's such a simple thing to get right. That it's not, that Ukraine is not in NATO, because that's been a big point of contention and discussion as well.
All along, he's been saying it when he ran the last time. Look, the idea that any American, think about this. If I told you all there was going to be an American president who said, Putin, come do whatever you want to NATO. if the other guys on our team don't pay up every single cent they promised to pay for. I mean, God, what are we talking about here? What in God's name? How the idea that the President of the United States is inviting Vladimir Putin to invade Western countries? It's bizarre.
Oh my goodness. He didn't do that. What are you talking about? That's not what happened. There was some speech where he said that, like, basically, if you're in NATO and you're not paying your fair share, then why should we help you? You know, you should be paying an equivalent amount of your GDP towards NATO that we are. I think is basically what Trump was saying. And if not, hey, you know, if you're not going to pay what you owe us, then we're not going to give you what you want. It's basically what he was saying, right? Like, hey, you know, Russia can do what you want. That's a lot different than saying that he actively wants Russia to just run roughshod over members of NATO.
Bizarre, absolutely bizarre, and it's totally against our interest. And by the way, I've known every major foreign leader for the longest time, and I know all these guys extremely well. They're scared to death what it means for them. For them, what it means if we walk away. Madeleine Albright was right, the former Secretary of State. She said, we are the essential nation. We are the essential nation. We don't have people fighting in those areas, but we're providing the wherewithal for them to be able to protect themselves. And it's just outrageous what he's talking about.
He talked about how he wants to be a dictator on day one, but only day one. You are someone who has dealt with dictators over the years. It does seem as though democracy, in vague terms somehow, is not easy for us to grasp. Having dealt with dictators, what do you see in a world where democracy is actually at risk in a way it might be in this election?
The first thing they do, the dictators do, is they disregard whatever the rule of law is.
By the way, I just want to cut through the fear-mongering. Democracy is not at risk. There was only one candidate who was remotely fascist in this election, who was Ron DeSantis, and he dropped out. There's no... I mean, sure, Nikki Haley said some things that made it seem like she might want to be a fascist, but no, she's not going to do anything remotely fascist if she becomes president. And I don't think Joe Biden will either. This fear-mongering is ridiculous. No, democracy is not at risk. No, this isn't the end of America as we know it if Donald Trump wins the election. These people need to calm down.
They just disregard it. Here's the guy who said...
Look. I used to fall for all of these tricks, right? I used to fall for all of these tricks. Especially back when I first started following American politics in 2008. And I'm going to be all vulnerable here and tell a very personal story. But I remember in 2008, Joe Biden, if he didn't have dementia, would remember this too, because he was on the ticket when Barack Obama won the presidential election. There was a lot of fear-mongering going on. I think I remember I was paying some attention to Sean Hannity, listening to Rush Limbaugh as well. People were talking about how Barack Obama would fundamentally reshape America and all of this stuff. How awful Obamacare would be. And, you know, when the election rolled around and Obama won, I was relatively distraught as an 8-year-old self. Might be listening to all these fear-mongers in the media talk about how Obama was going to destroy the country. Now, you know, Obama did implement Obamacare, and it wasn't the best. But did it destroy America? No, necessarily. Did Obama as a man destroy America? No, he didn't. So, like, people were acting like the sky was falling all the way out throughout the entire election cycle, and then Obama became president, and it was nothing. So ever since that happened, I've been like, well, why should I listen to people if they're gonna say, oh, the sky is falling, the earth is melting, and America is going to die if the person I don't like becomes president? I feel like a lot of that's just hysteria to push for people to vote for, folks who are in their political interests. So when people say, oh, democracy is at stake, I'm like, haha, yeah, sure. No. Y'all mind about democracy being at stake, and then you won last time. So you might want to calm down a little bit there, Bucky.
Guard whatever the rule of law is. They just disregard it. Here's the guy who says he thinks he can change the Constitution and ignore it. Just ignore portions of the Constitution. Here's the guy who talks about retribution. Here's the guy, look, you have the guys, the thousands of people who stormed the Capitol. They're insurrectionists. 2 cops died.
They're not insurrectionists, no.
Other people were badly hurt. And what did he say?
One protester died as well. To be fair, she was being violent and storming through a barricade, but still.
They got convicted or they pled guilty, and he said...
Many of them were overcharged. The vast majority of them should not be in jail still, I don't think. Many of them are being rightfully charged, by the way. There was that one person who was like, oh no, I'm in house arrest. And she sat in a dress in a barn while she was photographed by journalists, and right-wingers were fawning over her. And then I read that she was, smashing things, being violent towards officers, and had like a weapon in her hand or something. Like, some of these people do not deserve sympathy, no matter the political persecution that the Democrats are trying to pull. Some of these people were indeed very violent. There's no excuse for the violence that occurred.
They're patriots? God, patriots? And he says he's going to forgive them all. Every one of them is going to be released. What is?
I mean, the majority of them should be released. I think it's misguided to release them all. But I would forgive you if you decided to release all of them after seeing how this whole situation has been handled.
Well, I mean, that's what happens in Eastern European countries. That's not what happens in America. And the idea that he thinks he can do that, the idea he talks about.
He literally can. Presidents have a power called what's it called? Called pardoning. They have pardoning powers where they can, forgive someone of crimes. Ain't no one crying when he pardoned Lil Wayne and Kodak Black. But now that he wants to pardon some people who agree with him politically, now all of a sudden we have a problem. Okay.
Things like, for example, the idea that he said the Congress wants to pass an overwhelmingly a border provision that would allow us to control the border. First bill ever introduced called for that. And here he's saying, no, don't do that because that'll help.
First bill that he introduced? Let's see, what's the first bill that Joe Biden introduced? Joe Biden first bill as president. On his first day of president, he implemented a federal mask mandate. I don't know if that says his first bill. Hold on, let me see. None of these are bills. What was his first bill? List of bills 20. Oh yeah, signed by President in 2021. Because I believe that's when he took office. Bills which the president signed into law. Oh no, this is a comprehensive list. Oh, okay, here we go. No presidential consent needed. Incorporated into enacted legislation. I believe this means it was signed by the president, if I'm not mistaken, but this is HR 22. Short title, Congressional Budget Justification Transparency Act, to amend the Federal Funding, Accountability, and Transparency Act of 2006 to require budget justifications and appropriations requests of agencies to be made publicly available. Not sure if that's anything to do with immigration. Let's just Control F. Immigration. There was a bill about giving them access to counsel, giving illegal immigrants access to counsel, and I think expand workers' rights for illegal immigrants who are working on farms in March 8th. So is he just lying here? I don't know what he's referring to exactly.
That's what happens in Eastern European countries. That's not what happens in America. And the idea that he thinks he can do that, the idea he talks about things like, for example, the idea that he said the Congress wants to pass an overwhelmingly a border provision that would allow us to control the border. First bill ever introduced called for it.
I mean, there was nothing in there about a border either, was there? No, literally, there's like nothing in here about a border. I don't know what he's talking about.
For that. And here he's saying, no, don't do that because that'll help Biden. Help Biden. It's not about Biden, it's about the United States of America. And look, I don't want to get started.
Haha. TV.
Yeah, I get it.
Democracy is a state.
It
really is.
I want to ask about the situation right now in the Middle East. You've forcefully spoken about the horrible events of October 7th and how Hamas is a continuing threat to the safety of the people who live in Israel. You've been trying to negotiate the release of the hostages. At the same time, you've said that the response in Gaza is too much and that the loss of an innocent life in Gaza.
Even if he agrees with that assessment, I even think that some of the things that they've done has been too much. As the President of the United States, you have to communicate that behind closed doors. You can't be running around in public saying like, "Oh, they're doing too much," and then support everything that they do. Like you can't do that. Like supporting everything in public. So, for example, like the United States has not on a singular thing told Israel to stop in public as a state. It hasn't. So you can't, as a president, be like, "Oh, they're doing too many things," and then like not use their power as president to limit the things that the state of Israel is doing.
Gaza is just as horrible as the loss of an innocent life in Israel, and yet there have been calls for an immediate ceasefire. You have not supported those calls. Again, you seem like an optimistic person. You believe maybe there's a future for a two-state solution, but from where I'm sitting, it does seem like there doesn't seem to be any appetite for that right now. Do you see because again, we see every day we see these horrible images out of Gaza. And is there a path forward? Is there a safe future for the people who live there?
There is a path forward with difficulty, but here's the path forward. Look, first of all, the hostages being held must be released. And if we've got at least a principle agreement, there'll be a ceasefire while that takes place. Ramadan's coming up, and there's been an agreement by the Israelis that they would not engage in activities during Ramadan as well, in order to give us time to get all the hostages out. That gives us time to begin to move in directions.
I haven't heard news about this outside of him mentioning this. Has this been confirmed? Because the dude's been known to say things publicly, and then the White House is like, nope, that's not the official policy position of ours. Or like, they're not actually doing that. So has there been confirmation that this is something that's been agreed to? If so, great. But if not,
is that a lot of Arab countries are prepared to move in.
For
example, Saudi Arabia is ready to recognize Israel. Jordan, Egypt, there's 6 other states. I've been working with Qatar. And the bottom line is that I think the only way Israel ultimately survives, and I make no bones about it, I get criticized for having said it a long time ago, you need not be a Jew to be a Zionist. I'm a Zionist. Were there no Israel, there's not a Jew in the world to be safe. But here's the deal. They also have to take advantage of an opportunity to have peace and security for Israelis and Palestinians who are being used as pawns by Hamas. And so,
by the way, he said that he's a Zionist. The claims that Joe Biden's going to lose the election because of the Israel-Hamas war, I think, have been completely exaggerated. The types of people who are kind of calling what's going on to Hamas and to the people in Gaza a ceasefire. From everything that I can gather, they seem to be a very, 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 very vocal minority. It's a relatively fringe and extreme position to say that Israel should just do a ceasefire. And as such, like, despite the fact that, like, literally there were protesters outside of the taping of this episode calling him Genocide Joe and all of that stuff, I don't think that there are enough anti-Israel and or anti-Semitic Democrats who I don't think that there are enough of those types of people to prevent Joe Biden from winning the election. If he loses the election, it's not going to be that, or at least it's not going to be just that. It's going to have to be that plus something else.
So there's a process underway.
Because you also have to consider the fact that there's nowhere else for those voters to go. Those people who hate Israel and or hate the Jews, they're not going to just turn tail and vote for Trump instead. So it's got to be more than that to take Joe Biden down.
Way that I think if we get that temporary ceasefire, we're going to be able to move in a direction where we can change the dynamic and not have.
Oh, merely says literally 17 hours ago, an article came out quoting that. I don't know if it was confirmed. Yeah, so for me to consider it confirmed, I would say that Israel would have to say, yeah, it's confirmed we're doing this, and Hamas would have to say, yeah, it's confirmed we're doing this. Both have come out publicly and said that before. With previous hostage exchanges, they've been like, yeah, we're agreeing to this, we're having a ceasefire, and we're exchanging the hostages. So yeah, we'll have to wait on word for that. I would not take it as truth until either of those people say that that's what's happening.
A two-state solution immediately, but a process to get to a two-state solution, a process to guarantee Israel's security and the independence of the Palestinians, but without them being able to, for example, invite in, another country to provide their defenses. There's ways to do this, and I don't have time to go into it now, and in the meantime, there are too many innocent people that are being killed. And
True.
Israel has slowed down the attacks in Rafah. They have to, and they've made a commitment to me. They're going to see to it that there's ability to evacuate significant portions of Rafah before they go and take out the remainder of Hamas. But it's a process. And look, Israel has had the overwhelming support of the vast majority of nations. If it keeps this up without this incredibly conservative government they have, and Ben-Gvir and others, I've known every major foreign policy leader in Israel since Golda Meir, they're going to lose support from around the world.
True.
And that is not in Israel's interest.
They're actually already losing support from around the world. So outside of America, anti-Semitic tendencies are a lot more prominent. So we're seeing a lot of other nations going mask off, being like, no, actually Israel shouldn't be trying to beat Hamas. They should, do a ceasefire. I think there was a massive proposal where basically all of the UN was like, Israel should do a ceasefire, and Israel vetoed it by saying no. Which honestly was kind of a Chad move, right? But yeah, Israel has already lost the PR wars. I've heard it said on the radio, and they've already kind of lost the goodwill of a lot of various nations due to how many civilians have died. And let's be clear, that's largely the fault of Hamas. I do think Israel was relatively reckless in the beginning. But let's not pretend that Hamas isn't using human shields here.
Well, I wish you the best of luck with that, because they are really horrifying scenes, and I'm happy to hear you agree with that as well. I do want to close by thanking you for something. When you were here in 2014, you gave me two gifts. First, you gave me an Amtrak whistle, and
what?
And
okay.
It was 10 years ago. I didn't have kids yet, and I have kids now, and it's their favorite thing, and they blow it all the time, and it's really irritating, so I want to give it back.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
And
I'm not going to take it back.
We're
going to
covered
give it
with
to your
germs.
kids.
Also, you gave me this this conductor's hat, and this meant the world to me because when I put it on, I realized that you didn't just buy this at a store. You obviously went out of your way. You got my hat size because when I put it on, it was such a perfect fit. And
let's get moving.
Let's get moving. I really want to thank you so much for being here, Mr. President. It means the world
That
to celebrate.
didn't land as much as it
That's
should
President Joe
have.
Biden, everybody. We'll be right back with more Late Night.
Interesting.
Welcome back,
See, there was
everybody.
another
We're here
segment
with
of this
my very good friend,
interview
Amy
as
Poehler. We were
well.
talking about the first show.
There's another interview, portion of this interview as well. I will say that was considerably less embarrassing than I thought it would be. I thought for sure that it would be kind of a mess. But either they edited out the parts that were bad, or they got him the drugs he needed to perform. But yeah. I am also just now realizing that it completely makes sense. At first I was like, why is Amy Poehler in this episode? But now I'm realizing this totally makes sense because Amy Poehler started a character in Parks and Rec where there was a running gag that she had a crush on Joe Biden, so they're finally meeting.
We're here with my very good friend Amy Poehler. We were talking about the first show back in 2014. Your fellow guest, he was kind enough to follow you that night, Vice President Joe Biden.
Yeah, that was
He
very,
was out
very
there with
special.
us,
Very
and,
special.
He was a class act.
Yeah.
We did try to get him for our 10-year anniversary show. Obviously, he got his bigger job now, so he was unavailable.
Oh, you couldn't get him?
I couldn't get him, no.
Oh, I could get him. Hey, Mr. President?
What? Okay. I didn't know he was still doing that jog thing. Oh, don't trip. Okay, good. What? This just... I feel kind of bad that, like, he had to be told where to sit. He's like, where can I sit? Yeah, can I sit over there? Does that work? Oh man.
Welcome back, Mr. President.
It's good to be back. Why haven't you invited me earlier?
Well, you know, you were a busy guy. Did you think when you were here in 2014 this show would make it 10 years?
No.
Yeah.
See, I'm glad he still has his like charming personality still, because like I always liked his personality. And one thing that I was kind of salty about as his dementia became very clear, like he lost a lot of like his charming personality, which is the reason why a lot of people liked him in the first place. So I was kind of salty about that. But it's cool to see him like cracking jokes and stuff. Clearly, this is probably the best he's been doing cognitively in a long time. Again, probably pumped up on some sort of drug so that he could shoot this in like 20 minutes and then get out. This is not a demonstration that he is fit enough to be in a presidential debate, by the way. But it's just a fun thing. Like, I'm going to enjoy moments of cordiality, and moments of lucidity from the president for as long as we can get them, especially if he's cracking jokes.
We appreciate the honesty, you know? No, you guys actually, you've been colleagues before. You worked together. You did an episode of Parks and Recreation. We talked about it back in 2000.
Forgot about
kidding
that.
me? I bragged about that all for a long, long time.
That was really fun.
That was before president. This was the best gig you ever had.
And maybe the best gig I ever have, period.
Yeah. How was Amy? How was the president as a scene partner?
Well, it was an awesome time to go to D.C. because we met with the then Mr. Vice President, Mr. President, Vice President, President.
That is right.
I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want to get it wrong. But we met people from both sides of the aisle, and then, if you remember, we did that scene together, and then you said to me, how should I act? And I said, just act like, what is this lady doing here? And you nailed it.
Nice. I need to watch that episode again. Good show. Good show. I need to buy it. Put it in my DVD Blu-ray collection.
I want to look to the future, but one last glance to the past. In 2014, you had just called LaGuardia a third world airport, and you had to fly into LaGuardia to come to this show. And the only reason I bring it up is LaGuardia, much to the chagrin of late-night comics like myself, is a beautiful airport now. It's a beautiful airport. And it really does speak to what infrastructure spending could do. Sometimes it takes a long time, but it's really worth it. Have you been to LaGuardia recently?
I have, but it didn't take me a hell of a long time.
Yeah.
The last guy he had infrastructure week every week.
Yeah, you did.
but we actually got it done. How can you be the leading country in the world with ranked number 13 in terms of infrastructure?
It's not good.
Out of how many countries, though? There are a lot of countries, believe me. It's like hating on like an NCAA basketball team for being ranked 5th. Like, come on. I do agree, though, we should be number 1. So, I'm not sure if we'll get there under Joe Biden's tenure.
Possible.
Yeah.
Not possible. But that's not the only thing we're doing. We're getting a lot of things changed.
You got a lot of things changed, and I want to ask about that, but there's something that I've been it just speaks to the era we live in now. There's a Dark Brandon conspiracy meme. And this is something that you seem to have a lot of fun with. You've co-opted. You've co-opted Dark Brandon. This is a yard sign. And
he's not co-opted it well, though. Because the whole thing about Dark Brandon was, like, initially, like, is that he was a fascist, which is from, like, alarmists, right, in right-wing social media. Excuse me. That's where the meme originated from. Then, after that, far leftists were using it to make fun of the idea that he is a powerful leftist because in all honesty, he's more like a doddering fool. And then after that, the Biden re-election campaign decided to try and use it like semi-unironically to kind of be like, yeah, look at Dark Brandon getting the job done. And it just doesn't really work. He's always looked cool in his sunglasses, and to be honest, I've always been a sucker for sunglasses. You can ask people who've known me quite well. Always going to be a sucker for sunglasses, but that doesn't mean that he's intimidating or cool when he wears them.
do you enjoy playing around with the Dark Brand meme?
No, I resent the hell out of it.
Okay.
He's actually doing a pretty good job with these jokes. They're probably pre-written, but he's doing a good job.
Now, my favorite one recently is
he's killing it with them compression socks. Let's go.
18% of Americans, according to recent polling, have believe that you and Taylor Swift are actually working in cahoots. And after the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl, you posted this on social media and you wrote just like we drew it up. Now, I have you on the hot spot here. Can you confirm or deny that there is an active conspiracy between you and Miss Swift?
Where are you getting this information? It's classified.
It's classified? You won't share it with us?
I'm not gonna, but I will tell you, she did endorse me in 2020.
She did. I bet you might be wondering. You think it might come around again?
I told you it's classified.
It's funny.
I'm gonna ask you another question because we mentioned Parks and Rec, and Parks and Rec was a show that was about how government could actually help people, and it was a really optimistic show. Real quick though, well, do you believe any conspiracy theories?
Oh yeah, I do have one conspiracy. I think that an octopus is an alien.
Okay.
And the bottom of the sea floor is actually the top of the earth.
He's leaving. He's gonna go.
I don't know if I would have left, but I don't blame him.
Told you to stop telling people that.
So if that's wrong, don't spoil it for me.
All right, Parks and Rec was about optimism. You, I believe, are more optimistic about this country than certainly I am, than a lot of people are. Why do you continue to be optimistic about this nation despite everything that's happened in recent years?
Look, I tell every world leader, and I mean this sincerely, never underestimate the ability of the American people. There's nothing beyond our capacity, nothing. Think about it. Every single crisis we've ever been in, we've come out stronger than we went in. Everyone. And folks, it's because of you, not because of your leaders, because of you, really and truly. America.
You know, usually this generally is the case, but we have not yet surpassed the Trumpian eras of the economy yet. So eventually we'll get there, hopefully, if we don't get nuked. We'll see.
American people are incredible. And we're the best. You know, I was asked by Xi Jinping about when I was in the Tibetan mountains with him. And he said, "Can you define America for me?" I said, "Yeah, one word." possibilities. America believes anything is possible.
Sorry. No, he played into that one. He walked into that one. I'm sorry.
By the way, people step up. People here step up, and look what's happened. We got the best economy in the world now. We got a long way to go, but the best in the world now, and we're going to get it better.
When was the last time any country had an economy better than America's?
I have a lot more to ask you about what's coming up next. You guys, that's President Joe Biden. That's Amy Poehler. We'll be back with more from President Biden.
Well, that went a lot better than I thought it would, to be honest. I thought that was kind of going to be a bit of an embarrassment, but it ended up being okay. Honestly, the person who embarrassed himself more in that entire situation was not Joe Biden, even though like he forgot some things like the fact that Roe v. Wade got passed, but was what's his name, Seth Meyers himself, over here acting like Ukraine's like a NATO country or something. It's not a NATO country. I don't know why he was acting like that. Especially since like he doesn't really get an elderly man pass because I don't think Seth Meyers has dementia. So you can't just be doing that. That was crazy. But hey, fun stream. Didn't get to get through everything I meant to get to, but I do thank everyone who popped into the stream for popping into the stream. A lot of chat messages from official Mike. Thanks, official Mike. Once again, popping into the chat. The stream is not the same without you for sure. Maybe a little bit less chaotic and scatterbrain, but yeah, it's definitely not the same without you. Also, Merely in the chat. Nice to see you here. Hope to see you in the future as well in future streams. Yeah, pretty much all I got. I have plans to talk about other content. I'll push those forward to future streams. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I will see you guys in another stream. Join the Discord, links in the description below. And yeah, that's it. Peace out.
Lesson I learned from the seed is it starts slow. Trust me, you gon' see the tree if you look close. Don't you know having faith is a substance of things that you don't see. But trust me, you gon' see the fruits of your labor. Trust in the King and my focus on laser. Walking in purpose, I'm blessing on favor. I tried to go fall in love with the paper. Till you show me love that will never waver. No one can give me the food that you cater. Tried to move fast and regretted it later. Long as I'm focused on you and your truth, I know I'll get the fruits of my labor. They said if you ain't stuck at guap, then you wasted. They said my time's wasted. Hey, got a whole lot more. I said the first gon' be last. You got everything you need right up in the kingdom, that's facts. I can teach you how to serve like that. Even the king will show love from the front to the back. It don't matter what you might lack. From the homeless on streets to the ones who got M's in the bag. Never too great to get back. Always quick to forget when you love everything that you have. No, that will never last though. You wrapped your arms around me like a lasso. You went and painted the picture Picasso. Oops, Picasso, you made my heart grow. A lesson I learned from the seed is it starts slow. Trust me, you gon' see the tree if you look close. Don't you know having faith is a substance of things that you don't see. But trust me, you gon' see the fruits of your labor. Trust in the King and my focus on laser. Walking in purpose, I'm blessing on